Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. Let's see, recording started. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about abundance. It's been on my mind a lot. It's been coming up with people that I'm been working with or talking to in general. And so I wanted to address it, talk about some things that you can do and just bring some awareness around it on how it shows up. I am going to start with a little bit about my story and why I started doing the work that I'm doing and my own subconscious filters. So I grew up with parents that were teenagers when they got married. My dad had a lot of anger issues. So imagine being about 3 or 4 years old. I had my own separate little playroom off to the side. And I can remember being in there with my Barbies and playhouses and my Disney records, doing all these little girl things. And my dad asked me to clean up my mess. And just like a normal 3 or 4 year old, I didn't listen, didn't do it. And he totally flew off the handle. And this became a theme throughout my childhood and into my teenagers, as long as they were married, with him really getting overly upset and just really big anger bursts. And so what this did for me is I created all these filters subconsciously that I made when I was 3 or 4, but they came with me as an adult. So some of those filters were, it's not safe to be me, because if I'm just playing with Barbies and being me, that's not safe. And somebody might get mad and upset. I was pre-calculating how people were going to be, or how things might show up for myself, how people were going to possibly react to things that I did. And there's a list, and I actually have a visual to show you that, the list of things that showed up for me that I had to go through and shift later in life, because I didn't even really know they were there. And yes, they were affecting my business, they were affecting my relationships, and most definitely my level of being able to receive money, receive love, receive all kinds of things, because that's all related. So that being said, I'd like for you to just take a minute and think about what your vision is over the next, let's say, year, or maybe up to 3 years, 5 years, whatever you're comfortable with. So let's take a deep breath and think about what you want in the next 1 to 5 years, whatever works for you, what you really, really want. And this is for you, so just write it down, and I'll give you a minute to do that. And you may even have a list. So if there's more than one thing coming to you, go ahead and write down, what do you want? You can think about different areas of your life, your business, your relationships, your health. I'll give everybody a minute. Or if you're listening to the recording, you can pause if you need more time. And then on the other side of that, what are the things that you don't want? Maybe the things that are showing up now that you would like to wave a magic wand and get rid of. And I'm talking behaviors.
This is feelings we don't want.
Feelings or behaviors could be a combination of both. Thoughts. While you're writing that out, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen. Okay, so now that you've got what you want versus what you don't want, and I'm going to explain and talk a little bit about what's going on kind of underneath the surface with that. So I named this How to Overcome What's Holding You Back, Shift Your Energy, and Increase Your Level of Abundance. And this is for entrepreneurs who've been struggling maybe for a long time in this area. Usually, from what I see, if there's a struggle here, there's a struggle in other areas as well. Or maybe you're just frustrated. Maybe you've had a lot of success and you're just frustrated about where you are. and you don't know how to shift out of that. And sometimes the frustration lies with other people. We get frustrated with other people or frustrated with ourselves about saying yes too often, and it's keeping us from doing the things that we want to do. So this is meant to be an eye-opener for you. And this is what we're going to explore today. I'm going to talk about some of the common mistakes that I see that people get, how they get stuck on the hamster wheel, the real reason, or some of the real reasons why I see entrepreneurs having trouble overcoming these things, where and why these subconscious patterns develop. I know I shared my story a little bit earlier about how some of mine developed, and those were just some. We all have many, and how that affects our level of abundance. And I'll go into mine more specifically in a moment. And why discovering the root cause of this is really key to be able to shift the way you're showing up energetically. And I hope you know what I mean by the energy pattern. We all have a way of being that we show up in. And whenever we have these filters, subconscious filters they're going through, it affects how we are being with other people. And even if you don't say anything, they sense it. They sense it subconsciously. So that's what I mean by that. So we're doing all this so that you can recognize your own patterns and shift the energy around that so that you can experience abundance. I know most of the people on this call know me, but I will just tell you really quickly. I've been studying transformation for over a decade. I actually now have over 1,000 hours in training. I've got certifications in both NLP, top level neuro-linguistic programming, and also transformational coaching and energy coaching from different programs over the last 8 years. And so what I've done is I've taken all of these and I've put them together and created my own process to help people shift the way they are showing up so that it sticks, so that it's not just one time thing or you have to try and be abundant. If you've ever tried to be anything, I'm sure you know that it can be frustrating and exhausting, especially when you have these subconscious patterns going on. I know a lot of you know me because of my subconscious realignment session. This is what I'm known for, and it really helps people get clarity, and it works with the subconscious mind. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the things that I see that keeps people in a scarcity mindset. And these are things I did. So it's not just people, it's me too. And I'll just bring this up really quick. This is a quick diagram of what's going on in your subconscious mind. So when I talked earlier about like my dad and how I grew up, all of that came in, and before the age of 7 is when you develop these internal filters, and it's made up of your memories, your values, your beliefs. It can be generational patterns. There can be generational patterns of scarcity. And if you get my emails, you saw a little story about my grandma and her cookies. That's one of the generational patterns that I've had to deal with. And out of that is where your decisions and your behaviors and all of that comes out of. So it's really important to work on the internal filters first. Everything that I do in my coaching business, when I work with people on retreats or anything, is transformation first, because you can have the best strategies in your business, in really anything that you're trying to do. But if you have a filter that says something different, that doesn't align with it, you're going to continue to struggle. And so what I see people do is they try and shift things in the wrong order. And this is what I did. So we ignore the filter. we sweep it under the rug. All that stuff with my dad, I just swept it under the rug, or, well, if I ignore it, or I'll just move on. I'm just going to move on from it. And it didn't get me anywhere because it was still there. It was still the energy that I was showing up in. So for me, and for many other people that I know, you end up feeling exhausted, defeated, frustrated, because you're not getting anywhere because you're still stuck in that pattern. So what people do, and what I did, is we end up trying to shift the energy by actions. And the actions that I took to try and shift that is I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I got more counseling. I did affirmations. I did so many affirmations. I hired business coaches and strategists, and those are all great things to do. You end up spinning your wheels if you have these filters going on that go against that. Does that make sense? So the key is really shifting the energy first. And there's a specific process for doing that, which I'm going to share with you. Actually, I'm going to share an example with you. It's my own example, so you can see the real reason why people aren't able to increase that level of abundance. This is me in my head. So what's really interesting about this, what I have found, is when you have an energy pattern or a filter going on, when it shows up in one area, it shows up in another. If you've ever heard the phrase, how you do some things is how you do everything, that is true with subconscious filters also. So, and for example, before I dig into this, if you have a problem with receiving money, you may have a problem with intimate relationships. So because there's some kind of filter that says it's not safe, or it's, there's all kinds of different things that could be going on there. And that can affect your ability to receive. Your filters that are developed before the age of 7 are a combination of all these different things coming in, the people you're around, your beliefs, like I said, generational, all these different things. And so I had this stuff with my parents, but also my grandmother took care of me quite a bit. And grandma was sweet. She was kind. She was all these things. I spent a lot of time with her. She also grew up in the Depression. And because she grew up in the Depression, we got into this discussion on my retreat about how she would save plastic bags and wash them. I don't know if you've known anybody that has done that, but on the retreat, several people knew somebody that saved plastic bags.
My dad would hang up paper towels to dry and then use them again.
Wow. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So she would save these plastic bags, and then she would make these cookies. And cooking was not her forte, baking or any of that. She would make these cookies, and she would actually count out how many chocolate chips would go into each cookie. And I kid you not, it was only 3. So these cookies are made with lard. So they're really super flat, and they have 3 chocolate chips in them. And she stores them in these leftover Wonder Bread bags, sticks them in the freezer. So by the time you get them, they're as hard as a hockey puck. And we would always say thank you. And, we were grateful for her and all of that. But we would end up ultimately throwing out the cookies because they were so bad. So I tell you that because she had so many habits that I was around that instilled scarcity thinking in me. So those were some of the filters. So besides the ones that I got from just growing up in the circumstances that I was in, I got, I'm not important. There was a fear of conflict. There was a lot of guilt. I had this, it's not safe to be me filter going on because, when I was me, I'd get in trouble. I had this, we might run out. thing going on that I know came from my grandmother. What if there isn't enough? I must stay small to be safe. It was much easier to say, be quiet and stay small because that kept me safe. And I most certainly didn't want to upset anyone. And I had a hard time asking for what I wanted because it wasn't safe. So this is the filter that I developed before 7, but the filters don't go away. They stay there. And so out of that is where my decisions were made. So my decisions were based in scarcity. I had this scattered energy going on of not enoughness, if that makes sense. And there was a lot of guilt going on. There was a tendency to accommodate other people. And I did that because I didn't want to upset anyone, because I might make them mad and they may blow up. Even though that didn't make any common sense, it was what was going on. I wasn't even consciously aware of it, but that was what was going on. And this affected my ability to receive money in my business. It affected my ability to be able to go out and build a bigger business because of these are some of the filters. You know, we all have several, and there's different layers, lots of different layers to all this. So once you're able to shift the energy in these filters, whenever something happens now, well, let me go back for a minute and show you something. So when something would come into my field, we'll call this my field, some kind of new client came into my field. This is when I was first starting out in my business, or a customer, or, you know, whatever it was in the time, it would all these filters would happen in my head without me even knowing. And that is where my decisions were being made from. And so I'm sure you can see how that would affect my ability to succeed in my business and really create a sustainable income. And now that I've shifted many of these filters, like I said, there's different layers to these things. There's things that I think, oh, dang, I think I cleared all that up with my dad. And then boom, there's another one that I didn't see that shows up in a little bit of a different way. There's always deeper levels to things. So one thing I've learned about transformation is you're never really done. There's not really an end point. It's just a different level of it. So when you're able to shift the energy around these filters, you're coming from a more of a neutral place. This is something that was a surprise to me. So, and I find this with clients too, that sometimes there's things that we shift, and even if we're working on money or business or, you know, something of that sort, ends up that a relationship or something in a relationship gets better too. So for me, being present and in the moment was huge for me. And that was something that I wasn't able to experience before because I was so worried about walking on eggshells kind of thing from when I was little. So I was always worried about what's next or what might happen. And I was never really enjoying the moment and didn't even know I wasn't. Because when you've done something your whole life, a lot of times you don't even know that you're doing it. I was able to ask confidently for what I want, what I need. It shifted my relationships because I wasn't so distracted about trying to please them all the time so that I wouldn't get in trouble. And then, of course, that increased my bottom line in my business in a big, huge way. So this was a client that I worked with. Russ is not his real name, but he also had several filters. And at the time he came to me, he was working like 80 hours a week, always trying to catch up. He was very critical of other people not doing their part. He was unable to hire a team and really grow the way he wanted to. And some of his filters going on was a fear of failure. He felt disrespected, struggled with internal anger, frustration. He always felt behind. and had a big fear of what others will say. And I can remember from working with him that a lot of his filters were generational. We had a grandfather who really had a lot of anger and frustration things going on. And there was a perfectionist thing going on also. And so he just learned these habits and behaviors. And then his perception and behavior was one of really, I mean, he was frustrated a lot. It was showing up in his personal life with his wife and his kids, and also in his business in a big way. He couldn't keep employees, in fact, because they were never good enough for him. So when we were able to shift Russ's filters on those things, he started responding differently. He wasn't getting as frustrated. He was able to prioritize what was important and let the rest go, which was huge. So that feeling of I'm always behind was not there anymore. And then, he's let go of a lot of guilt. So now he's hired some team and he's got clear goals going forward into the next year on getting where he wants to go, instead of trying to bite off everything with these great big chunks and then always feeling behind. The next part I want to share is how the steps that you need to shift the patterns and step into a new way of being, specifically if it's abundance, how does abundant be, if that makes sense? So one of the things that I've learned in doing this work is you want to find the subconscious patterns first, identify what those blind spots are, and help you see what's been getting in the way of the big vision. That is absolutely key into moving forward. You'll want to locate what caused it, what the root cause is. Most of the time, I've been working with people recently going through relationship troubles, divorces, and things like that. And they think a lot of times that it's the divorce, it's the ex-husband, it's the ex-wife, it's this, it's that. But most of the time, it's something that's happened way before, way before the age of 7. And it's those patterns and how they show up. And then the transformation, igniting that and really discovering the truth of who you are at a soul level so that you can step into who you want to be versus who you've always. And my favorite part is shifting that new energy and really feeling what that's like in that new way of being, and really experimenting on how you would be if you were no longer in that, like we did in the beginning, what you don't want. And then the final part is to really integrate. So there's different steps in transformation. And this is part that for a long time, I didn't understand, but this nurturing part is the part of integration that needs to happen to help you, because when you have a transformation, you shift into a new energy, you're going to have stuff happen that's going to test you. Life has a way of testing you. Life has a way of testing the way you've been and how you've been showing up, and almost like asking you, hey, are you really ready for a change? And it's in those moments that I find that this nurturing part, the support part, is really, really helpful so that you can navigate all those different filters and layers. So I also wanted to leave you with some techniques, and I wanted to talk a little bit about money specifically, because that's the topic, is abundance. But, meditation, guided meditations, those are super helpful. If you've got a lot of scattered energy, it can really help ground you. meditation, prayer, guided meditations, anything like that, or a combination of all of that. You can also change your belief structure through affirmations. And this is something that I did for a long time. It got me like so far. And I'll just throw out this disclaimer about affirmations, because if you're doing affirmations and you've got some kind of filter that goes directly against it, you could be actually doing the opposite of what you want to do. I know this because I experienced it. So if you are doing affirmations and that is your strategy, just be really clear about whatever affirmation you're using really resonates with you, because if it doesn't, it's not going to help you. If you're saying, I am abundant, and your subconscious mind is going, no, you're not, you're going to have the opposite effect. So you have to use little baby steps on affirmations to be able to change a little bit slower. Stress reduction, breathing, more sleep, do your self-care, all of those things help shift those internal structures. And then gratitude. I want to talk about gratitude just for a minute because it's so important. And your gratitude towards your money that you receive and your money going out. And I actually read a book recently. If you're on my email list, I think it was in last Monday's newsletter, about really looking at your money in a different way and even having gratitude about the bills you're writing out. And that can be a way to really shift your energy around abundance. So instead of looking at it at, oh, I've got this mortgage payment, being grateful for, I've got a house over my head and I am so grateful for this space, and looking at it that way. So being grateful for the services and the things that you have, instead of what a lot of us normally do is, oh my gosh, I got to write out this check for this or pay this bill. And same as with money being received. So if you have a business, be grateful for every single dollar that comes in, because that really helps your energy shift. And out of all these things, I would say that's probably the most important self-technique. And because our brains really are like computers, and we just need upgrades every now and then. It's like your computer gets a virus and then it runs slow, it doesn't work properly, and maybe some of your apps and things that you're trying to do aren't working properly, and everything slows down. And you're the same. So when you've got a subconscious filter going on, it can really slow you down and it can stop you in your tracks. And just like that circle that we see on our computers that it's thinking, we do the same thing. We just spin, and it can really slow us down. So think about that. When's the last time you had an upgrade? If you think about how often you do it with your computer and your devices, we're probably similar, that we need it often. And so we went through what do you want versus what you don't want, which I think is helpful because sometimes we don't look at those things. Also, we've talked about the mistakes. We've talked about the real reasons. I gave you a lot of my story and how those things were affecting me and my subconscious patterns, why the subconscious patterns develop, and then also why discovering the root cause is really important, because that gets to that filter. That very first filter is really important in shifting these energy patterns. So that being said, I'm launching a mastermind, and it's launching in October. I honestly have two that are launching. So one is specifically for coaches and the other one is for entrepreneurs and business owners. So if that's something that you're interested in or you would like to know more about it, I'm not going to go into it all here, but I'll give you a link to my calendar and we can hop on a call, or you can message me and we can just have a conversation about it. It's really for if you really want to shift the way you've been in your business, shift the things that have been getting in the way and really get into a different level, a whole new level of abundance. That's who it's for. Okay. And I'm going to actually put that in the chat, and then we're going to open this up for questions.
I'm getting there. Hold on. So that really hit home when you said, I must stay small to stay safe.
Mm.
And sometimes I'm wondering if it's, for me, if I stay small, then it's easier for me to control.
Mm. Yeah, well, it could be, and that's the thing. And honestly, when you say that, Diane, that was an aspect of it for me, because I was able to control staying small. I was able to control the outcome, which ultimately for me was staying safe. And honestly, our subconscious mind, most of the time, what it wants to do is it wants to keep us safe. That's the ultimate thing that it's trying to do. It's just trying to keep us safe. So it almost always comes back to that in some way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I mean, it's almost like I could list things of, I want to stay small because then nobody else will want it and want to take it away, or just a list of why it feels safe to stay small.
Yeah, I hear you in that. Yeah. Did you have any other question or comment about it?
And no, I know that my mom too was like that. She grew up very, very poor, and she had that same thought process of, but she kind of delivered it more of, we don't deserve to have it. And then I had the opposite of my dad, who grew up poor also, but he thought he should have everything because he grew up poor.
Yeah, so that's kind of opposite spectrums, really. Yeah. Do you see one or the other showing up more for you?
I think it's the battle of both of them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That not deserving part. I feel like, I know that I experienced that too, but it was coming from a different place. We're all different. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like the way these show up are so different. And it can be mind blowing on how things show up that you weren't expecting.
Yeah. As soon as I think, and I don't want to make this about me, but as soon as I think, oh, this is a great big idea, it's almost like the next thought is, well, who do you think you are? So, but I really liked everything you said, and I'd like to talk to you more about your, what'd you call it?
Mastermind. Yeah. I put a link to schedule in the chat, or you can email me, or we can chat later and get that on.
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing. And one thing I feel like I want to say this is, anytime somebody shares, somebody else is resonating with it always. So that's why I think it's important to, be okay with that. Somebody else probably really needed to hear that too. Any other questions, insights?
Sure. I was actually at the retreat, and it was so restorative and so informative. And I'm actually in the mastermind for coaching. And I came home and utilized what I learned with my children, and they've had transformations as well, like humongous transformations. Like, my daughter came out to visit from North Dakota, and I talked to her last night. She's like, Mom, like, the concert was amazing that we went to, but the technique that you did for me, transformative. Like, my life is 90% changed. Like, wow. She would get obsessive thinking, and she's like, it's literally down to like 10%. She's like, I totally feel like I can catch it. and not have to entertain it like I used to, which is amazing because she's been battling that since she was like 10. So it's phenomenal. So thank you, Kim, for sharing what you've learned with us, because it has been absolutely transformative for me and for my family. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for sharing that. I love hearing that too, because I have such a heart for young people and our families. Partially because of the way I grew up, and wanting to really help people with how it just affecting next generations, quite honestly, because they're in charge of us, or will be. And I just want to help them as much as possible. So I love that you took those tools and were able to use them with family. Okay. How about takeaways? Questions or takeaways from today?
For me, I think the biggest takeaway for me is, of course, I've done your 4-hour rapid results and had amazing results with that, but having to go back through again, because I feel like I'm in need of doing that again. So for me, it was, I guess I thought it was going to be like a one and done kind of thing. And it's not. So yeah, just that whole thing, having to go back through and reassess and reevaluate those filters, or confront new ones that are showing up now that weren't there before. So
yeah, we are, like they say, and you did have, well, I want to just like honor you on that, because you did have really great results. I still remember like the same day and getting texts from you, and it was like really cool to see all the shifts that happened for you and in your business. Though that's something that I've learned also, is that generally people need more support than a one-day thing.
Yeah.
And we're all layers, just like Shrek said, he's an onion.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was really bummed I missed the retreat. I so wanted to do that.
Next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There will be another one. Okay. Any other insights or questions? I also will be sending out the recording, so you can listen again. But thank you all for being on today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You are quite welcome.
Bye, guys. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.